Hello, Internet. It is I, Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Predictions. Today, we're going to be talking about Twisters. So, as usual, we're going to be going over the pros and cons. So, let's get to it. Pros. So, Twisters is the sequel to Twister, a movie that came out all the way back in 1996. Yeah, so it's been a minute since the original. And here is the original right here. And while doing a bit of research for the original, I learned some things, some very interesting things. Well, for one, Twister was one of the first movies to be released on DVD. So this is during the era of like VHS and in the late 90s. That's when DVDs were starting to become a thing, not just like with movies, but also like music, especially like games. Like games moved away from like cartridges and going to like CDs and disc. So knowing that Twister was one of the first to be released on DVD, that's kind of cool. But when it comes to box office, like Twister, it popped off back in 1996. I mean, it was the second biggest movie that year, only behind Independence Day. It's 41 million. I mean, it doesn't. That's not a lot now, but back then that was like huge. It was enormous. It At the time it had the biggest opening for May, and apparently the sixth biggest opening for any movie at that time. The only ones that did better were Lion King, the original Batman, Batman Returns, Jurassic Park, and Batman Forever. And not only that, this had the second best, not the second best. It is that did have the second best second weekend of all time. Apparently, only behind a Jurassic Park. And look at that, only a 10% drop, and then it went up 2% Memorial Day, and that it had to deal with the first Mission Impossible. See that? Even with that competition, it still was going crazy. So yeah, these are some wild numbers. Like even now, these numbers like look very impressive because you don't see a lot of big movies like dropping this low, only dropping like 10%. I mean, I got Inside Out 2 only dropped like what? It's like 32%. Like that. And trust me, I was like Top Gun Maverick only dropped like what 28%. Like to drop like 10%, like that's wild. It really is. And it made almost like 500 million back then. I mean, now with like inflation and whatnot, it's a whole lot higher. Probably around, I don't know the inflation. It has to be like 800 million at least. But yeah, Twister, an enormous success back in 1996. Why it took so long to make a sequel and why make a sequel in the first place, I don't know. I guess they were just bored. Like someone was bored and they thought, Twister, that was a good movie. Maybe we could do something with that premise again. And so here we are with Twisters. And they did that. Like they didn't want to call it Twister 2 because like who would watch that? They literally pulled an Alien where instead of calling it Alien 2, they're like, you know what? Let's take that original title, slap an S on it, bam. Job's done. But yeah, the original Twister was an enormous hit back in 1996. It was a well liked movie. And yeah, that's obviously going to be a pro. So you got brand name recognition on your side. So that's pro number one. Pro number two, reviews for this movie are quite good. Has a 78% critic score, 93% audience score, and its cinema score is, let me see, A minus. So yeah, nothing really else to say about that. Word of mouth is good across the board. Although reviews for Twisters are actually better than the original movie, which kind of surprised me. But looking at it, like the original Twister has a 67% critic score. Audience score is 58%, which is kind of shocking to look at. I'm not sure why it's so low. Granted, it's like 250,000 plus ratings. Sometimes these audience ratings for like these old movies can be really low when most people like the movie in the first place. Like I think like another example of this that kind of perplexes me is like King Kong from like '05. Movie I like has a 50% audience score. Like what's going on there? It's weird. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like I don't get it, man. But yeah, reviews, word of mouth, strong, very strong. So that's a pro, obviously. Another pro I can think of is that this weekend is very much all about Twisters. You know, basically, Hollywood basically just gift wrapped it Twisters its own weekend because nothing else was going to be coming out July 19th. So, yeah, and besides, there's no direct competition with this, really, at least, yeah, really no direct competition at all. There's no other disaster movies coming out in the near future. And besides, like, Despicable Me 4, that's 2 weeks old. Inside Out 2, that's over a month old. Um, so, Long Legs is not direct competition. And yeah, there really isn't anything that'll like stop this movie, at least not in its first weekend, its second weekend. Oh, I have some stuff to say, but we'll save that for later when we get to the cons. But right now, competition wise, nothing to worry about. So that's a pro. Another pro I can think of is that this is a disaster movie. Obviously, tornadoes are natural disasters, and you know, Hollywood has a history of making a bunch of disaster movies, and you know, a decent amount of them can make a whole lot of cash. And I'm trying to like find, I guess, Extreme Weather. It's the best I got. um, yeah, disaster movies, they've been around for ages, a long ass time, and when they do well, they can do really, really well. Say like Day After Tomorrow is like the first main example here. You have Day After Tomorrow, 2012. Those are like the main ones, but I know there's like a bunch more. Uh, Gosh, this isn't giving me like a complete list. Like I kind of want like disaster movie. That's its own genre. It's not here, but movies like Day After Tomorrow, 2012, San Andreas, back in 2015. I'm not sure why that's not here. I guess it's not weather related, but it's still a disaster movie. Movies like those, they made a whole lot of money. They made hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So the disaster movies definitely have a strong appeal when they're done decently enough. um, but so like so yeah, disaster movies, they have a history of success, big history of success. The genre is not flawless. The genre is not, unbreakable. It has its disaster movies. You got your bombs here and there. Like remember Geostorm? Does anyone remember Geostorm? I seriously doubt it because no one saw it. Definitely not in the States. No one gave a damn about that movie. That movie was doomed forever. But yeah, sure, you have like movies like Geostorm stinking up the joint, but disaster movies, they certainly have a place, and they certainly have a wide appeal. So yeah, I'm gonna label that as a pro. Let's see. Another pro is that this movie, the way like it's from what I've seen my trailers and whatnot, it seems this movie is really trying to gear itself towards like middle America in a way, trying to appeal to like not like the usual like the crowd like Hollywood likes to gear towards the LA, New York crowd, wants to gear more towards middle of America, which is what Top Gun Maverick did to stupidly high success. And it's important I mentioned Top Gun Maverick because it's not written here, but the story of this movie was made by Joseph Krasinski, I believe. Yeah, Joseph Krasinski, the man behind Top Gun Maverick. So there's a connection there. Yeah, Joseph Kwasinski. Yeah, dude made Top Gun Maverick. As you know, 2 years ago, Top Gun Maverick came out. The long-awaited sequel to Top Gun, like Twisters, it took a long ass time to exist, and that came out, and it just decimated any and all expectations. This is not going to be that. I'm just going to say that right now. It's expecting a Top Gun Maverick success again, like, is silly. That was very much an anomaly. You can't just have an anomaly happen again. Like, it's just not. You can't guarantee that ever. But anywho, yeah. So this is obviously trying to gear itself towards Middle America, and seems like it's working, judging by the early numbers I've seen. So appealing to like that crowd could actually be like a really good thing, because that crowd has been relatively underserved, like when it comes to movies. So if you give them something, and you give them something that they'll like and that they'll eat up, you can make some cash, and that seems like what's going on here. So yeah, like the trying to appeal to Middle America seems to be working out really well. So that's a pro. Another pro I can think of, one of our leads, Glenn Powell. Let's talk about him. Well, I guess we can talk about like Daisy Edgar Jones first, because like, I wonder what is she? Okay, she hasn't really been in much, really. At least not on the big screen. Maybe on the small screen. Maybe on streaming that I'm not aware of. But I want to look up her via Wikipedia. Yeah, well, she hasn't been like in a whole lot, and this is like her first big movie. But she did start in like Where the Crawdads Sing, which came out 2 years ago, the same summer as Top Gun Maverick, and this was like a big old like a sleeper hit. But but yeah, I don't know. We can really judge her based off one movie. Now, Glenn Powell, let's look at him, because I imagine like obviously comparably he's like the bigger draw here, especially for like the female audience. But yeah, Glenn Powell, who was in Top Gun Maverick. I swear, there's a lot of coincidences with Top Gun Maverick, a lot of connections. But yeah, he's in Top Gun Maverick. There's also in Devotion, but nobody saw that. No one cares about that. But an important movie, Anyone But You, which came out back in December. It was a movie that had a very slow start, and little did anyone know it would have very long legs, a very long life. It was kind of crazy, but it became a big old sleeper hit and just a huge hit overall. So obviously, having like some like Twisters come out after Anyone But You, the timing couldn't be any better. It really couldn't. So yeah, and besides, him just being there, obviously he's gonna, if anyone's gonna bring in that female audience, it's gonna be him. So I mean, the disaster element that's gonna bring in usually brings like the male audience. So yeah, like the male audience and the female audience, thanks to tornadoes and Glenn Powell. So don't got to worry about that problem. So I say Glenn Powell, after the success of Anyone But You, I say he's definitely a pro in this case. So that's another pro. And I think last pro is his preview numbers. I was kind of shocked by these numbers. 10.7 million. you think this would hit like 6 or 7 at best, but double digits? Like, that's wild. Although, to be fair, that is 2 days worth of previews. It's Real Thursday previews. Apparently, we're like around 8 million, which is still really good. I mean, for comparison's sake, why is this compared to Shrek 2? Of all the movies, why Shrek 2? I don't get it. Anywho, uh, gotta find something like that's well, if it loads, okay. Try and think of something. Let's do Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. That's recent. Sure, it's not the same movie at all, but it's a recent big movie, a recent big summer movie. This thing is just not loading. Okay. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. That also had about 2 days worth of previews. So I'd say it's almost like a direct comparison in a way. Or at least it gives me something to work with. It's less apples and oranges. If it loads, God, the internet's just not. Internet's just not playing ball right now. It's just being real sluggish. But I had a Thursday preview of 6.6 million and opened with 58 million. So yeah, as you can see, Twisters is looking really good compared to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So yeah, but these preview numbers are excellent. They really are. It shows that this movie is going to be like a big draw this weekend, a huge draw. And it's continuing the trend I've seen recently ever since Bad Boys Ride or Die, where like the big movie of the weekend like tends to overperform like projections, like Bad Boys 4, Inside Out 2, Quiet Place Day 1, Despicable Me 4, even to a lesser extent Longlegs, all defied expectations and all did way better than expected. And it seems like Twisters is going to follow suit. So that's nice. But yeah, the preview numbers for this movie, very good. So that's a pro. I think that's it with pros. Okay, cons. Well, some of these cons really don't. Okay, this con really doesn't matter now, but before release, I was thinking, about his chances of success because I'm thinking like Twisters. I mean, the original Twister is an old ass movie. I mean, it's seen as like good, but not like an instant classic, like say a Top Gun. It's not as iconic as that for like comparison's sake. And I'm just thinking like who really wanted a sequel to Twisters? Who was really asking for a sequel to Twisters? Where was there ever any demand for one? Like I don't know. It just the whole existence of Twisters kind of perplexed me. And but at least like it's kind of good. This is like a standalone sequel. Like if it was like a narrative, like a direct sequel to Twister, I don't think people would really care. It'd be a lot harder to make people care if that was the case. But with Twisters as a standalone sequel, you don't have to watch the original. It's not required viewing. You can just watch this by itself, and it's just like okay. So that's a little easier on the audience, especially since like a good amount of moviegoers today are not going to remember that original Twister movie. They're just not. And you're trying to get more like younger people to give a shit, and making this standalone, I say, is a good way to do that. You don't have to deal with like homework, when you're watching the original. But yeah, I was thinking, this chance. I was thinking, will people really care about a Twister sequel? But it seems like people very much do care. So that con's kind of thrown out the window. But a real con for this movie is nothing to do with the movie itself, but what it has to deal with next week. Because it has to deal with a problem. Actually, no, not one problem. Two problems. Deadpool and Wolverine. Okay? So as you know, Deadpool and Wolverine is coming out next week. It is probably the most hyped movie of the whole year. It has a large amount of buzz surrounding it, a lot of hype, a lot of anticipation, and it's been built up for months as being like, well, for a while it was like the summer savior. Oh, this will save the summer box office. But granted, this was before anyone knew how big Inside Out 2 would be. But it's still expected to be a monster hit and the type of movie that will come in and suck up all the box office dollars. And Twisters might be one of those movies that gets severely affected by Deadpool Wolverine, especially since Deadpool Wolverine's gonna get like all the big screens and everything, all those IMAX screens. So yeah, Twisters is gonna have to deal with that, and it's gonna hurt. I would imagine, even though word of mouth for this is very good, I I don't see it really. There's a chance it could survive Deadpool and Wolverine. There's a chance it could thrive alongside it, but I don't know. I don't think the chances are that good. But we'll see. Like if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But still, Deadpool Wolverine, that's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. So dealing with the potential mega smash that is Deadpool and Wolverine next weekend, that's a con. Definitely, in my eyes, it's a definite con. But I think that's really it with cons. I can't think of anything else that I think will affect this movie. Really, I mean, it does have a rather large budget of like 155 million to like 200 million. I looked at that 200 million budget. I'm like, damn, 200 million for Twisters. that's that's kind of wild. But I thought that was kind of reckless. But judging by its box office, it seems like maybe it wasn't so reckless. It wasn't such a reckless decision. But yeah, so opening weekend, originally projections were like at 40, 50 mil. Right now, it's gonna hit 70 plus, and I feel like I'm gonna. There's a chance it could go higher than that potentially. It's one of those sky's the limit type situations. Um, so I'm gonna go between 70 and 75 million. So 70 to 75 million opening weekend. Its legs, its total. It, what happens next weekend when it deals with Deadpool Wolverine, I think will determine how it does in the long run. Like if it can survive Deadpool Wolverine, then it should have like a long run theoretically. If it gets crushed by Deadpool and Wolverine, then like its legs are going to be real short, or not real short, but a lot shorter than they would be. So all its legs, like its final total, all of that really depends on what happens next week. But for right now, I don't know. I guess I'm gonna go with like 200 million uh, at least. 200 million domestically, and yeah. So that's it. That's it for the weekend. Very slow weekend, and I know like the year-to-year comparison compared to like last year, which last year we had Barbie and Oppenheimer. Barbenheimer coming out. That year-to-year comparison is going to be rough. It's gonna look ugly. But the good news is that next week we got the big one, Deadpool and Wolverine, a movie I'm very excited about. I think we're all very excited about. It's going to be a real hype fest. And yeah, it's expected to make big money next weekend. And it should definitely, I would say it won't completely erase the the loss 2024 is going to take compared to 2023, with Barbenheimer, but it's gonna make up a good amount of it at least. But Deadpool Wolverine isn't the only movie coming out next weekend. Surprisingly, you think it would just be that? Because what movie would want to open up against that? Apparently, we got other movies. We got Dee Dee, yeah, and The Fabulous Four. Yeah, so we got two movies that basically stand no chance against Deadpool and Wolverine. So we got these three movies to talk about next week. So stay tuned for those. But yeah, so that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. We'll check out more videos like this. I got a playlist on the homepage, all previous prediction videos I made this year, the past few years. Want to watch any of those videos? Go right ahead. It's also the canceled series where I went over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't, all 250 episodes. I talked about Twisters one time. Yes, only once. And it was episode 170. I talked about it alongside 65, Next Goal Wins, Heart of a Lion, which was the George Foreman movie that you all forgot existed. Um, they listen, and yeah, that's it. So yeah, the only time I talked about it, it just got its it had its July date and it never moved, not once, not with the strikes or nothing. It stayed put. So yeah, that was like the one episode I talked about Twisters. But if you want to watch any of the past cancel episodes I made, all 250 of them, you want to binge watch them from beginning to end, I highly suggest you do that. So go do it. There's also box office recaps where I go over the box office results for any particular month. July recap, that will be between the 2nd and the 9th. It should happen like between that time. And looking at July's box office, it's been going really good. I mean, it won't be as good as last year because you don't have Barbenheimer on the schedule. Um, Still, it's been a solid time at the box office. Movies have been, well, not every movie's been a hit, obviously, but we've had, a lot more positive stories than negative stories ever since Bad Boys Ride or Die, came out. And it's just been nice. It's been good to feel positive about the box office. Like, it's not fun to be all negative and just be depressed over the results. It's not fun. So I'm glad things are, good, or things are in a relatively healthy, or things are just relatively healthy at the box office. Makes making videos about it more enjoyable. Yeah, but if you want to watch any of the past recap videos I made on the channel, you can go right ahead. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.